Hi everybody, I'm Robert LaRocca, you know me. Here we are picking up where we left off in part 1 at the Davidson School for Military Robots. This is a place of deep ritual behavior. Here we see the helm of a ship with an eagle and the all-seeing eye inside. Here is Sergeant Neff. Over to Neff's left is a statue of a Native American Indian, which is all that's left because the United States government genocided them. Here we see the two Thorn girls. Mark's salute needs some work. The U.S. flag flying in the wrong direction. Damien looking coldly from under his visor with his thin, cruel lips. Neff is telling them all how it will be. Part of the ritual is to intimidate your own people. Here is Neff getting a closer look at his hero. Neff is obviously in love. We cut to the Thorn building. Bill Atherton is expressing concern to Rich Dick about Psycho Paul. Rich tells Bill to give Paul a chance. Here is the unclean and depraved Anne walking toward the servants, much to their dismay. Anne decides to invade Aunt Marion's privacy. Anne sees that the door is open in the once mighty Marion's room. Anne sees that Marion has suffered a fatal heart attack. The loathsome Anne shows concern, but most likely only because she sees her own eventual fate. Here is Paul talking some smack. He looks like Mike from the Brady Bunch. Bill looks over and can't believe this ass is even sitting next to him. Rich is showing his bottom teeth, a habit he probably picked up from Ugly Ann. Paul is explaining why Thorn Enterprises should buy all the land on Earth, literally. Panchali tries to explain to Paul that he is suggesting they go into the business of enslavement. Bill comments that he isn't surprised to hear Paul spewing such filth. Paul doubles down, citing that energy companies do the same thing, so why not food companies? Bill looks at Paul and can't believe the depths of Paul's wickedness. Paul smiles because he thinks his perm gives him special powers. Rich once again tries to placate Bill, why no one knows. Here we cut to Teddy pointing out Robert Thorn in the photo of the old football team, mistakenly assuming that Robert was the father of both the Thorn girls. Damien says, "Teddy, don't ever talk about my father again." And if I were Teddy, I would follow that advice because Damien's dad is the devil. But unfortunately, Teddy is a dumb brute. He doesn't see what he's walking into. Here, Teddy makes a rednecky comment to girlish Mark. Mark swings a girlish right hook into Teddy. Teddy suffers no ill as a result. Here is Neff trying to quell his overwhelming feelings of love for the Antichrist. Damien, for some reason, is becoming quite comfortable in almost any situation. Here is Teddy beating up a defenseless girl, but he is happy to see another potential victim approaching. Damien stares at Teddy with cold blue eyes and thin, cruel lips. Teddy stares for the first time into Damien's depthless oblivion, and also realizes that he just fudged up. Damien is locked on, and now it's time to get evil. Damien takes control of Teddy and smushes Teddy's fat face against the glass slats on the door. Then Damien evens out the other side of Teddy's fat, dumb face. Damien regards his prey coldly. Here, Mark the girl is thinking, what the hell? Damien, easily able to stare over the hard line of his thin, cruel lips. And Teddy didn't get any smarter from the encounter. He still looks quite the idiot. Mark girlishly asks Damien what he did to Teddy. We cut to a miserable servant with food for Rich Dick and Evil Paul. The two men don't even look at her, as she is the same as furniture in their eyes. Here she is sadly fulfilling her duties for Peanuts. Paul looks at her as she leaves, probably imagining all the colored people he will soon enslave. Rich looks at Paul and still doesn't get it. Paul uses reverse psychology on Rich Dick. Paul suggests to Rich that maybe he should leave, and he is very pleased to see his ploy work, as Rich tells him, "No, of course, you must stay." Here is Joan, the journalist, introducing herself to Rich. There is an arrow pointing to Rich with the word king next to it, and I guess Rich is supposed to be a king in the story. Joan has beautiful eyes and looks honestly into Rich's face, hoping for some semblance of reason. Joan cajoles her way into riding with Rich to the airport and begins to ask Rich questions about his brother and Bugenhagen. Rich is trying to shine her on, but Joan presses forward with more questions that begin to paint a pretty scary picture. Murray looks back to check on his master, ever the faithful slave. Joan has seen the wall. She has been investigating Bugenhagen's death for years. Rich doesn't like reality when it isn't easy and has Murray remove Joan. I love this frame of Joan really trying for Rich's attention. Rich stares straight ahead. How well that has worked for him so far. Joan desperately begs Rich to listen. She bangs on the car window in futility. Here we are at the Thorm Museum, appropriately featuring the work of Edvard Munch, creator of The Scream. Here, grubby, sleazy Anne feels Charlie's shoulder and sticks her horse face into his. She has to touch every man because she is skanky. See how she keeps her foul, smutty hand glued to his shoulder, still touching him with her malodorous hand, trying to look cute in her stupid brown hat, but she knows she is infested with various STDs. Charles has a surprise for her. It's a photo of her done in a statue, the harlot riding the beast. Here, with a slightly closer look, we can see that the beast actually has 7 heads, not 10, as I mistakenly commented in the last video. The 7 heads represent 7 churches. Anne makes me want to Purell my hands after just typing about her. Joan sneaks up and scares jumpy, dopey Charles. Joan says that she just got back from interviewing Rich. Charles intros Joan to Anne. Joan knows what she's seeing. Anne has a not-so-fresh feeling, but has become accustomed to it. Joan begins to tear into Anne about the whole Damien schmagagel. Anne is thinking about men and not really listening. But Joan knows that Anne is an evil slut. Charles just talked to Rich, and Rich is very angry. Charles is angry at Joan for pissing off his meal ticket. Joan faces off with Anne. Anne is not sure how much Joan knows, but she doesn't like it. Joan has a feeling about Damien, but she doesn't know what it means. Anne is despicable in her insatiable lust for evil. Charles, are you just going to let this woman come between me and my soon-to-be boyfriend, Damien? Joan, dressed stylishly in a red coat, delves deeper into her investigation. She searches the playing field at the military academy for Damien. As you can see, she isn't happy. Now, if this were Anne, she would be jumping up and down in a fit of glee with all the juicy, tender young boys around. Joan has an awful feeling as she recognizes Damien from the wall. Fear attacks her mind. Her eyes widen just like Teddy's did when he faced the same abyss. She drives away repeating the Lord's Prayer. Her car begins to fail. Please God, let this car start. She gets out of the car to seek help. The bird of death appears. Joan runs and the bird chases her. The bird attacks, and this is quite reminiscent of Hitchcock. The bird tackles Joan, pulling at her hair. The bird is flapping and pecking and clawing poor Joan. Joan screams as the bird continues to assault her. The bird pulls her hair and rips her flesh, gouging out Joan's pretty eyes. Here comes the old Mack truck cliche. I think that this is the same Mack truck that appears in Vanilla Sky, so watch my video for that movie. The truck hits Joan and Joan goes flying. This is how it actually works, I know from experience. Then the truck runs her over. And that's it for poor Joan. She really tried to do the right thing. And the bird sits waiting for craft food services. Now here we are back to frolicking in the winter snow, having a great time with some expensive snowmobiles. And here is grubby Anne looking at all the boys. This is a cringy Oedipal scene with the boys attacking the father, especially Mark. The boys are pelting the poor old man with freezing snow, while whorish Anne smiles and flashes her ill-gotten wealth. Here she is practicing dislocating her jaw. Here is stupid rich Dick who does not know why he's laughing at frostbite. Mark and Damien congratulating themselves on besting an old man. Their snow gear is the most modern and expensive. Here is Rich laughing like an oaf after his own sons attack him. And it's Mark's birthday. The crowd of people are gathered to celebrate while Anne presses his face into her bosom. Girlish Mark is feeling more masculine. The repugnant Anne leans into Mark's face. Here she is with her tongue out. Gross. Here Anne provides unrequested help to get closer to Mark. Closer still. Now we can kiss with our mouths open. Wasn't that fun? Mark's face betrays a raging excitement. Anne is doing her job well. Mark and Damien still look like girls, though. A cake that foreshadows something. Here Bill is plagued with false Paul. And the devil's trollop is doling out extra cake to the destroyer, while Charles tries to understand the intricacies of an instant camera. Mike from the Brady Bunch says, "Yep, Damien, we have a lot to look forward to. Famine. That's what I'm bringing." Damien's lips are becoming progressively thinner and more cruel. Here is Paul pontificating about nothing, trying to schmooze up the Antichrist, which tells us this guy is bad news. And it's time for expensive fireworks. Wheelbarrows full of money squeezed from the poor and the working class, all going up in showers of sparks and useless smoke, much to the delight of the onlookers, celebrating over 4,000 years of servitude and generational enslavement. Thin-lipped, cruel Damien is quite confident now, talking about how he can feel something inside. Poodle-permed Paul says, yes, that's the evil we want to encourage. Damien does not get hot in a thick sweater over a shirt because he's from hell. Happy birthday, Mark. They ran out of room for the part that says you wealthy prick at the end. Here's the grand finale. It's the last birthday Mark will celebrate. Ice skating with the Antichrist. You barely have to think to know what's coming up next. Here's stupid rich Dick laughing at nothing. He fell on his pampered ass. That's hilarious. Mentally challenged Paul wobbles over to the troop of hamburger and hot dog trollops. And the floozy is happy to get her gnarled hands on a man. And that's Lowry's seasoning in the background for the burgers. Anne offers an insincere apology about Joan's fate. Inside, though, she's thrilled to have her whorish plans green-lighted. Clueless Charles listens but has no comprehension. It registers somewhere in the dim recesses of his mind that yes, it was terrible when his friend had her eyes pecked out by a devil bird and was subsequently obliterated by a Mack truck. Anne smiles at the thought of one less obstacle and cozy evenings to come with her boys, Mark and Damien. The bird of death appears, and that can only mean one thing: the cruel demise bonus round. Bill, for some reason, loses all sense of consequence and goes skating toward a $5 hockey puck, while Paul restrains Damien. Then, possibly realizing at the last second his folly, he throws up his hands in surrender. Here, Damien actually looks sad as Paul assures him, "Don't worry, bro, there was nothing you could have done to save him." The slow and dim father-son team reach out to try to save their friend. This deadly situation registers only hazily over the group of Satan's hens and one gay guy over there on the right. Charles watches in shock as yet another of his associates is being pulled into the depths of nothingness. Here they keep shouting about how the current has him. Who was the genius who thought it was a good idea for a game of hockey over a sub-freezing river? Paul stands back, satisfied at an evil job adroitly performed. Bill pops back up through another hole in the ice, and for a moment it looks like he could survive. But Rich Dick knows that Bill Atherton is gone, and it's owed to his leadership incompetence. Here's the wide angle on the tragic scene. Rich Dick tells the iniquitous Paul that he is taking some time away from the business, and Paul will take over for the recently lamented Bill Atherton. And look at them both there, snug in giant, warm, newly purchased coats made from animal skin and fur. Rich Dick is sporting a brightly colored scarf to properly mourn the loss of a friend. Despicable Paul rubs his hands together gleefully. He can't wait to get started despoiling God's creation. Rich looks forward into a dark future of more ignorance and incompetence. Back at the Thorn building, which is adorned with strange graven images and a trademarked globe, Thorn owns the world. Paul made the cover of Fortune magazine as the new president of Thorn Evil Industries. Rich calls Paul into his office to gripe. Paul advises Rich Dick that he never indicated for a moment that he would not take full advantage of his situation in order to enslave mankind. Rich stands up in anger, probably mostly angry at himself for his foolishness and failure to curtail the obvious. Rich admonishes Paul that he is still expected to operate within the rules of conduct for the company and run any major decision by him, like the one to exploit people by owning their land. Paul stares blankly back at Rich's frustration. Rich Dick still doesn't understand the level of evil with which he is contending. Another wealthy man fails to act on the behalf of mankind, which brings us to the end of this section, detailing the unremitting saga of infernal wickedness and obtuse, ineffective leaders. But at least it's only a movie. Be sure to like and subscribe for the next episode of Damien Omen II Analysis, unflinchingly deconstructed for your amusement and contemplation.